Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Patna. He did his PhD in wireless cellular communications from IIT Kharagpur. He has around 20 years of teaching, research and industry experience. His research areas of interest include physical layer issues in wireless communications, 5G network, error control coding and digital communication systems. Sir has published over 100 research papers in various referred journals, other peer-reviewed journals and conferences. He is a regular reviewer of premium journals and TPC member of various conferences. He was the organizing chair of first IEEE symposium on 5G in Asia at IIT Patna. Sir has supervised 7 doctoral theses and more than 30 MTech projects. He has also successfully executed high-valued sponsored projects from Government of India as well as consultancy projects from industry. Apart from his teaching and research activities, he is also part of many administrative governing committees at IIT Patna and other premier institutes and organizations. He is also serving as the editor of Springer Wireless Network Journal and International Journal of Wireless Personal Communication. Welcome you, sir. I request you to take over the session.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah. So thanking me for giving this opportunity, and good afternoon, everyone. And I'm really thankful to Dr. Rao for inviting me and doing this Atal FDP. Today I'm going to discuss about a very important topic that is on 5G networks, and then we'll discuss about device-to-device communication. Let me share my slide. Yes. I think. Is the slide visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Fine. So let's start. So in the beginning, I will be talking mostly about this 5G wireless networks, and then we'll discuss about device-to-device communication also, right? And so this is the outline of my talk. So initially, I will introduce you about different generations of wireless networks. Then particularly, I will discuss a little bit more detail about LTE, 4G, because 5G networks is based on, one part of 5G network is based on LTE. So understanding of this LTE or 4G is very important to understand 5G wireless networks. Then we will discuss about requirements for 5G and challenges and facilitators. What are the challenges of 5G? First the requirement, then what are the challenges, and what are the facilitators, which are technologies which can ease out the requirement of 5G, meet out the requirement of 5G. Then we will discuss about dual track. So just now I told you that 5G will follow two paths. One is the evolution path that will be based on the 4G technologies, and other will be totally a new, revolutionary technology, that is new RAT, radio access technology. RAT stands for radio access technology. So we'll be discussing about new RAT. Then are in technology areas like new waveforms, millimeter wave, massive MIMO, headnets, cognitive radio, right, and device-to-device communication, which I will be giving more emphasis. Just for you, these other topics will be a brief introduction, but D2D we will discuss a little bit in detail, and then finally the conclusion and the references, right? I think you are able to see slide number 3, Dr. Rao. Slide number 3 is visible?
No, sir, we are still in the first slide only.
That is the problem is...
now it's visible, sir.
So
it's moving.
Slide 2. So that's a full screen. Okay, so just now, this just now I've discussed this, that how my talk will progress. Introduction, and then LTE and 4G, requirements of 5G, challenges and facilitators. Then you know that 5G can be developed in two ways. One is the evolution path, that is from the 4G, and then the second is the new radio access technology, then RN technology areas, new waveforms, millimeter wave, massive MIMO, head nets, cognitive radio, then device-to-device communication, right? And finally conclusion and references, right? So let us see a very important slide that how this evolution of wireless networks, how it evolved basically. So if you just have a close look to this diagram where I'm talking about, let me see. So this slide number 3 is visible, okay?
Yes, sir.
Let me get the pointer right. So this, if you can just have a very closer look on this diagram. So on the x-axis we have data rate, and the y-axis we have mobility and coverage. And what you can observe that when we are moving from 1G to 4G, so then one red curve is there, linear curve is there. So one thing is steadily increasing, that is linearly increasing or steadily increasing, is the spectral efficiency, right? So spectral efficiency is going to increase, especially in a given hertz, given bandwidth, given unit bandwidth. What is the data rate you can support? So what you can observe that spectral efficiency is increasing, right? That's why we are able to add more devices, more data rate. We are going from low data rate in 1G to very high data rate in 4G and 5G. This is one important aspect. And then regarding this mobility, we have two things, and mobility or coverage, we have two things. One is the indoor environments. There are two wireless networks are operated in two environments. One is indoor environment, where you can have two types of cases. One is a fixed one, other is pedestrian one. These we both treat as an indoor environment inside a building, right? And then outdoor environment, we have fixed, then we have pedestrian, then we have vehicular, right? So what we observe that when we are moving from 1G to 4G, the mobility is increasing and coverage is increasing, right? This is one aspect. Another aspect is that as far as switching is concerned, so 1G and 2G is invariably circuit switch, but 2.5G and 3G, they are of hybrid mode. They can operate a circuit switch as well as packet switch. And then we have 3.5G to 4G and 4G and beyond 5G. They all are packet switched. I hope you understand what is packet switching and circuit switching. So circuit switching, we have dedicated resource for end-to-end connection, but in packet switches, we have shared resource, right? So in circuit switching, we have guaranteed quality of service, and in packet switching, we have best effort service, right? And then another two, you can observe the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. They are talking about a spectrum. They are using this unlicensed spectrum. So they have. So that's why they are very cost effective, right? They are very cheaper services are very popular because you can get free Wi-Fi access. You can get, if you have a Wi-Fi device, you can get free Wi-Fi services, Bluetooth services. But other services, they are licensed. They are using licensed spectrum. Licensed spectrum is what. So the service provider has to pay for the license, right? So that is the case with most of this wireless network, whether it 1G to 4G and beyond, right?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, yes.
Sir, can you please share your screen in full screen mode, sir?
It is in full screen mode.
No, sir, we could not see that.
I don't know. Then how now? What is the? Are you able to see that?
We can see the screen slide, sir, but it is not in slideshow mode.
Now you tell me. Now it is visible.
It's visible now. Also, it is not in that mode, sir.
And for me, it is in full screen mode. I don't know.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. No issue.
I don't know what is the issue here. I don't know. But for me, it is just now. I've made it full screen.
Okay.
Now we are. So is it visible full screen?
No, sir.
What to do? I should again log in. Is it visible or not? Pardon?
It is visible, but you have to share it in the...
Hello?
Yes, sir.
screen. For me, it is full screen. I'm
Yes.
right.
Sir,
I
once
don't know why it
stop
is.
sharing the screen and again share it, sir.
Okay, let me try once. This I
Yes.
can do. Is it visible now?
Sir, it's
Is it
visible,
visible?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's visible.
Now, let me go to this one slide, full screen mode, slideshow. Is it visible?
Not it, sir.
No, I'm not able to do. Sorry.
It's
So
okay,
this
sir. No problem. You can continue, sir.
slide is visible.
No, sir. First slide only, sir.
So I have said so
Now
many times.
second. Yes, sir. Now it is visible, sir. Second slide.
So what I will do, just right now in third slide, and then now I'm going to full screen. So you are not able to see full screen,
No,
but you
sir.
are okay, fine. But it is visible. Slide number
Yes,
3,
sir.
right?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
fine. So I don't know what is the issue. I have said it so many times, but I don't know right now what is happening. But anyway,
Okay.
so let's continue with this. So briefly, what we are discussing right now about this evolution of wireless networks. So what we see, one important point is that this is we are getting a linear curve for spectral efficiency, and we have two types of network circuit switch, that is 1G and 2G, but 2.5G, 3G as in hybrid mode, and beyond that everything is packet switching. And we have licensed spectrum and unlicensed spectrum. Unlicensed spectrum, we have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, right? So so what? So fourth slide is visible, madam? No.
No, sir. Third slide only is visible. I think you have. Now it is visible, sir. I think there is a network issue. Bandwidth speed is slow, I think. Sir.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe. So this is fourth slide. Now we are seeing, right?
Yes, sir.
So just remind me. I don't know. There may be some, most of it is bandwidth issue. So this what we observed from previous slide is that evolution of wireless technology from 1G to 4G has witnessed improvement in different aspects like mobility, coverage, data rate, QoS, right? So what we have observed that when you are moving from 1G to 4G, mobility is increasing, improving, coverage is improving, data rate is improving, and quality of service is improving. It is not that if you are transmitting a very high data rate, the quality of service is degrading, right? So quality of service is also improving. And what you observe that 1G and 2G are circuit switched, but 2.5G and 3G are both circuit and packet switched. And but beyond that, 3.5G to 5G, they are packet switched. And all the evolving generations are using licensed spectrum, while Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and WiMAX are using unlicensed spectrum. This is what we have observed from previous diagram, right? So now I'm moving to slide number 5, right?
Yes, sir.
No, I don't know what happened.
It's visible, sir. 5th slide is visible.
Okay, just a minute, just a minute. The 5th slide is visible, madam?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Oh, fine. So now we'll discuss about the second generation wireless communication, which is, in the beginning we started with that in 1990s, but the fundamental aspects what we did that is very important. So 2G wireless cellular networks, and so 2G has second generation has two generations, 2G and 2.5G. Sometimes 2.5G are mentioned at 2.75G also. And so 2G has two standards, that is GSM and 95. So if you can see that that with this 2G standard, we can only support a data rate of 10 kbps. So that is only meant for voice communication, right? But what we felt that we need more data, right? So then we moved to 2.5G or 2.75G, and they are covered with GPRS and Edge, right? Two standards are there, and they can support you data rate of 50 kbps or 200 kbps, right? So what we observed that is GSM and IS-95 are based for voice communication rate of around 10 kbps. So only the GSM and IS-95 is only meant for voice communication. And coming to this general packet radio services, GPRS, because this GPRS is very, popular scheme, and then this, what they can do, they can provide an edge both with speed in the range of 100 kilobits per second to provide low speed internet, email, to users with mobile devices, right? So this low speed internet and email was possible only due to this GPRS and Edge, right? But if you talk about GSM and IS-95, they were invariably for voice communication, and they were only supporting 10 kilobits per second. So at the end of 1990, nearing the 1998-99, we felt that there is a need of high speed, right? Because with 100 kbps, you can hardly browse the internet and open your emails and all for mobile devices. So that was the reason that 3G came into picture in the early 2000s, right? So the increasing demand for higher data rate led to the development of the 3G cellular standard. This is what we mean to say. Now coming to the slide number 6, I hope it is visible. So this is a 3G wireless cellular standard, and again you can observe that 3G has two generations, 3G and 3.5G. So 3G are basically WCDMA and CDMA 2000. You can observe that. So again, here also we have two schemes here, right? So then we have 3.5G, and 3.5G is something very interesting. You can observe that 3.5G can support a data rate of 5 to 30 Mbps, a many-fold increase in data rate, right? But 3G was only up to 384 kbps, much higher than what 2.5G was able to support us, right? So what you observe that 3G wireless standards were proposed around year 2000, and primarily based on code division multiple access technologies. So 3G TDMA technology, 2G or 2.5G. And these 3G standards are wideband wireless technology as they employ bandwidth in excess of 5 MHz. So generally we say when we talk about wireless networks, we say that it's narrowband or wideband. So narrowband, when the supported bandwidth is less than 5 MHz, we say that it's narrowband, like 2G was narrowband. But when it comes to 3G, where we are using CDMA technologies and 3G and beyond, so they can support a bandwidth of 5 MHz, so they are called wideband technologies. And coming to this 3.5G, where we have two standards, HSDP, HSGPA, and EVDO. So best part was that high-speed downlink packet access. See, HSD stands for downlink. High-speed downlink packet access and high-speed uplink packet access, HSUPA, with the data rates in the range of 5 to 30 megabits per second. So they can provide data rate 5 to 30 megabits per second, are capable of providing services similar to wired technologies like DSL and ADSL. So what we can see that this wireless meets wired technologies. So using this HSDP and EVO technologies, we can get services similar to or equal to the wired modem, broadband modems. Right? ADSL modems were there. They are still very popular, ADSL modems. So the services, the quality of experience with this 3.5G is almost equal to the wired technologies, right? And why this data rate of 5 to 30 Mbps is important, because by using this 3.5G we are able to do this video calling and video conferencing, right? Before that, even with 3G you cannot do that. If you need to have a connection of 3.5G, either EVDO or HSDPA technologies, because for video conferencing and video calling you require a minimum data rate of 10 megabits per second, right? So that's what I'm writing at the end. Fifth point, data rate in excess of 10 megabits per second makes it possible to transmit high data rate multimedia and video content to mobile devices, right? So high speed, high data rate multimedia and video contents, they can be provided only when we have minimum data rate of 10 megabits per second over wireless channel. So that is the reason that with the advent of 3.5G, we were able to get this services, right? Video calling and video conferencing. So now coming to the slide number 7, I think it is visible. So here we are discussing about 4G wireless cellular standards. So 4G basically, you can see that 4G has 3 standards. The one is LTE, WiMAX, and LTE Advanced. And LTE can support a data rate of 100 to 200 Mbps. So from 3.5G, where we are having 5 to 30 megabits per second, we have come around 100 to 200 megabits per second in LTE. LTE, that is 4G, right? And WiMAX can also support 100 megabits per second. LTE Advanced, which is basically a advanced version of LTE, which is basically now primarily known as sub-6 gigahertz 5G, right? So they can support a data rate of 1 gigabits per second. But invariably, this LTE Advanced is very close to 5G. That's why we can say that. Now the question comes that, well, see, from CDMA we have used and we got a data rate of 5 to 30 Mbps. Now, how to get a data rate of 100 Mbps? That is almost 3 to 4 times more than what we are able to get in the 3.5G. What we did, right? What was the technology which made it possible? So that's why I'm writing that 4G is based on the, I'm using the word revolutionary. 4G is based on the revolutionary new technologies based on orthogonal frequency division multiplexing and multiple input, multiple output antenna system, MIMO systems. So 4G was possible because of OFDM and multi-input, multi-output antenna systems, right? And these technologies help the 4G systems to achieve data rates in excess of 100 Mbps, right? So why, see, this 100 Mbps was possible because this due to this OFDM and MIMO, right? And earlier 3.5G, they are using CDMA, they were only able to give you 5 to 30 Mbps. So the technologies which are very critical for the development of 4G and beyond even 5G are OFDM and multiple input, multiple output, that is MIMO systems, right? So we are at now slide number 8. This is cellular service progression. So just summary of what we have discussed till now. So we are talking about generation 2 to 2.75G, where rate of 10 to 100 kbps was possible, and that was meant for voice and low rate data. Already we have discussed. Then 3 to 3.5G, they were able to give you data rate of 300 kbps to 30 mbps, and with this, in addition to voice and data, video calling and video conferencing was possible. In 4G, we are talking about data rate in range of 100 to 200 mbps, and with this 100 to 100 mbps, we can do everything what 3.5G can do. In addition to that, we are talking about online gaming and high definition TV. These were only possible with 4G. So each generation offers all the services of the previous generations, in addition to the newer services offered in the present generation, right? So what we can observe that 2.2 to 2.75G, it was only for voice and low rate. 3 to 3.5G, they were supporting this voice and data, but in addition to that, video calling and video conferencing. 4G, they offered all the services what 3.5G offered. In addition to that, we are able to offer online gaming and high definition TV. And this talking about this high definition TV, this high definition TV streaming application in 4G networks typically require a rate of 10 megabits per second per stream. Because in high definition TV, we have multiple streams, and each stream will require 10 megabits per second. So that was not possible with 3.5G, right? That is only possible when we have more than 100 Mbps data rate. Then only high definition TV is possible. Right. So coming on this slide number 9, this LTE, this long-term evolution, the last one, right? Understanding of LTE is important to understand 5G. So in November 2004, because this 3G, 3.5G, they were developed around 2000, 2004, right? So in 2004 November, 3GPP, third generation partnership project, right? They are the standardizing body, right? Still for 5G also we are taking 3GPP is standardizing the 5G technology. So 3GPP began a project to define the long-term evolution, right? LTE stands for long-term evolution of Universal Mobile Telecommunication System, UMTS server technology. And the aim was that in 2004, we are talking about 17 years back, right? At that time when 3G was already matured and we start filling off higher data rate, right? More number of users were being 4G was thought of giving a higher performance. They should be backward compatible with the 3G, and it should find wide application. It should be a next generation mobile broadband technology, because already 3G was a broadband technology or wideband technology. Promises data rates of 100 Mbps based on UMTS 3G technology, and they are optimized for all IP traffic. This is very important. For last point, what I'm talking about is that 4G or LTE is optimized for all IP traffic, means that there is no circuit connection, circuit switching, everything is on packet only, right? Everything is on the IP wireless networks, right? Now, what are the major LTE radio technologies? What are the major LTE radio technologies? We should know that. And so already briefly we have discussed that this LTE technologies uses OFDM, orthogonal frequency division multiplexing, for downlink. So downlink is invariably OFDM, and we know that downlink is more data sensitive, right? We need more data downloads, right? We want services on our mobile devices. So downlink should be of very high volume, right? So OFDM is used in the downlink, but OFDM is not suitable for the uplink due to the issues of synchronization issues. OFDM is very sensitive to synchronization issues, right? So just a few thought about OFDM. OFDM basically, they are talking. We are talking about orthogonal frequencies, right? So in CDMA it is single carrier system, but OFDM is a multiple carrier systems. We are not sending our data on a single carrier. Because if you send data on a single carrier system, then if you're transmitting at a very high data rate, your transmission will be subjected to intersymbol interference and multipath fading, that is frequency selective fading. I hope all of you are familiar with these challenges of wireless communication. So high-speed wireless communications are basically restricted by these two impairments, channel impairments we talk about. One is the intersymbol interference. So when you on CDMA or single carrier, if you transmit, high data rate transmission, in that case, what happens that the received signal will be you will be highly subjected with intersymbol interference, and there will be a lot of distortions. So the solution was that let us transmit on multiple subcarriers, right? Multiple subcarriers, and each carrier will transmit a lower data rate, right? So suppose you are transmitting at 100 megabits per second. So let's have 10 carriers, and each carrier will carry 10 megabits per second, right? 10 megabits per second, so that they are not subjected to intersymbol interference and frequency selective fading, right? But we cannot, that you can use in downlink, but uplink it is sensitive to this orthogonal using. So orthogonality will be lost whenever there is a frequency offset, carrier frequency offset, timing offset. There is another issue that's called peak to average power ratio, PAPR, right? So these things will restrict the use of OFDM in the uplink. So what we are using the OFDM in uplink. Uplink is still on single carrier. So single carrier frequency division multiple access used for uplink, because uplink we don't require so much higher data rate. And definitely we are using multiple input, multiple output. So MIMO for enhanced throughput. MIMO used because we are talking about 100 megabits per second. So 100 megabits per second we cannot achieve without having MIMO, right? Multiple transmit antenna and multiple receive antenna. So if you talk about 3G also, 3G, 3.5G, we are talking only about single transmit, single receive antenna, because CDMA we are using. But when we talk about 4G, we are talking about multiple transmit and multiple receive antenna, right? At the same time, there is a restriction on power consumption. So in 4G we are talking about reduced power consumption, and we are talking about higher RF power amplifier efficiency. So RF power, because most of the power is consumed in the RF power amplifier, right? So it should be the efficiency of this RF power amplifier should be good, so that we can have less battery power used by the handsets, right? So because handsets are portable devices. So just a brief idea about this OFDM, right? So just now I have discussed that we have data, we are transmitting at a high data rate. So what we'll do, first we'll do this coding and modulation. As usual, we will do this. We'll convert serial to parallel. Serial to parallel means that 100 megabits is converted into 10 streams of 10 megabits per second. For example, I'm talking about, right? And all these 10 megabits per second, they are transmitted over multiple subcarriers, and these subcarriers are orthogonal, right? And to implement this orthogonal subcarriers, what we are doing, we are using the IFFT, inverse fast Fourier transform, or inverse DFT, right? The DFT, FFT, you must be aware of that, right? FFT and DFT. So inverse Fourier fast Fourier transform is used at the transmitter, and FFT is used at the receiver, right? To implement this, to get this multiple orthogonal subcarriers, we are using this IFFT. IFFT will give you orthogonal multiple subcarriers, right? This is what I am showing you here. So data transmitted via closely spaced narrowband subcarriers. IFT operation ensures subscribers do not interfere with each other, right? Then we are adding cyclic prefix to take care of this multipath fading, and then we are doing this windowing and filtering to take care of this outer band emissions, right? And this OFDM is very important for LTE and Wi-Fi systems. Everywhere we are using this OFDM. And for a kind of information, OFDM is also used in 5G also, right? So we'll see that, right? So just a summary, what are the advantages and disadvantages of OFDM? Just have a look. So OFDM is spectrally efficient. They are robust to multipath environment. Just now I have discussed coexistence with current and future systems. Simple equalizer, but there are a lot of disadvantages, like high sensitivity to interchannel interference, sensitivity to frequency clock and phase offset. Time domain signal has a relatively large peak to power ratio, and due to these disadvantages, they are not used in uplink, right? They are not used in the uplink, right? So coming to the applications of OFDM, so OFDM has varied applications. Everywhere in the modern communication systems, wireless communication systems, wireless networks, you'll find OFDM. So all these standard wireless networks, IEEE 802.AGN, IEEE 802.16A, and IEEE 802.20, everywhere you will find OFDM, right? So OFDM is used there. Similarly, they are also used in fixed and wireline, fixed ADSL, asymmetric distance subscriber line, and for mobile and radio, digital audio broadcasting, digital video broadcasting, HyperLAN 2, WiMAX, physical layer RTG for 3GP LTE, 4G, and 5G also. Why I'm telling 5G? Because still 5G is in the standardizing phase, but most of the 3GPP release, they are advocating that OFDM will be the standard for 5G also. So we are going to use OFDM in the 5G also. There may be some modification in the OFDM. There are multiple variants of OFDM, but OFDM will use technology for 5G also, right? Now, coming to this 5th generation challenges. So just we have a brief idea about 4G, that 4G can support a data rate of 100 to 200 megabits per second. And they are using two very important technology compared to 3G and 3.5G, that's OFDM and MIMO. These are two important technology which we are able to ensure that we can transmit over a wireless channel at 100 megabits per second. And we're using with 4G, in addition to having video calling, video conferencing, we can have this online gaming and high definition TV. If you have any question, you can ask me before moving to other slides. Or you note down your questions, we can take it at the end, right? So let's move to the 5G wireless networks, right? So just have a closer look on this slide where we are talking about what are challenges, right? So if you can observe that 5G can, they are designed, 5G are designed for 10,000 times more traffic compared to 4G, 10,000 times more traffic, right? 10 to 100 times more devices. Latency is around 1 millisecond. 10 years battery life for machine to machine communication. 10 gigabits per second data rate. 100 megabits per second for low end data rates, ultra reliable. And this dotted line is a physical limit, right? So we are almost close to the physical limit. We cannot go beyond that. So what are the challenges? 5G aims to give you 1 to 10 Gbps data rate in real network, 1 millisecond of round trip latency, high bandwidth in unit area, enormous number of connected devices, because now number of devices what is being added to this cellular networks or wireless networks, exponentially they are increasing. Number of users that is being added, and each user have two, three connections, right? You can have a laptop, you can have a mobile handset, you can have a PDA, right? So each one user has multiple wireless devices, right? So that's why the number of devices increasing and data rate is increasing. And this 5th point is very important. We are talking about almost 100% coverage for anytime, anywhere connectivity, and reduction in energy uses by almost 90%. So interesting thing is that we are talking about 100% coverage anytime, anywhere, but at the same time we are talking about energy reduction by consumption by 90% and low power consumption, because we want a portable devices, because mobile devices are portable. Just I will discuss one challenge in implementing 5G, just to sensitize you how difficult it is to maintain some of the physical challenges of 5G communication. So what we are talking about in 5G, we are targeting a data rate of 1 millisecond, and so we are moving from 10 millisecond to 1 millisecond, because 10 in LTE, that is 4G, the delay is minimum delay is 10 millisecond, right? So we cannot go below than that. Minimum you can get 10 millisecond. So how we got this 10 milliseconds? So in this mobile handset, typically it takes 4 milliseconds to process that, right? Because mobile handsets we have that they are battery operated. We cannot have a very complex computing facility in the mobile devices. So they take nearly 4 milliseconds, but your BTS, then core network, then internet, everything combined is around another 4 millisecond to 6 millisecond, right? So in total, if you count, it will be around 10 millisecond. But when you talk about 5G, where we are targeting a data latency of 1 millisecond, right? So what we have to do, we have to do everything. This mobile devices should process everything in less than 0.5 millisecond, and then BTS and all of the networks, core network and the intranet, everything, internet, everything should be done with less than 0.5 milliseconds. So now you can understand the stringent requirement of 5G as far as latency is concerned. And for the kind information, till date we are not able to get 1 millisecond latency. We are around 4 to 5 milliseconds we have achieved, right? That is significant reduction, but still There are some applications where we want latency. So in all the applications, you don't require this much low latency of 1 millisecond. But like in IoT, Internet of Things, right? Device-to-device communication, for example, device-to-device communication, we don't require latency of 1 millisecond. But when talk about some specific applications like remote surgery, right? Autonomous vehicle, right? Self-driving vehicle, there we need a latency of 1 millisecond. No, this is a very important slide where I'm talking about. So this I made when we last year. We are very close to 2021 right now. So just have a look on this slide where wireless 2020 outlook scenarios. Beyond 2020, what we expect in wireless communication, wireless networks, right? So if you can observe that this 5G is going to be, or services are going to be categorized in two types. One is the enhanced mobile broadband, that is EMBB, and other is the massive machine type communication. This enhanced mobile broadband is basically we are using this enhanced mobile broadband, that is cellular communication or wireless networks, right? When you're talking about, we say that enhanced mobile broadband. What is that? We are talking about very high data rates in terms of 1 gigabits per second, high spectral efficiency. Spectral efficiency should be very high mobility, low PAPR in uplink, peak to average power ratio, simplified receiver design, and high density. So these are the requirements of enhanced mobile broadband. Now coming to this massive machine time communication, there are two applications. One is the IoT, Internet of Things, and other is the ultra reliable and low latency communication, right? So IoT, all of you are familiar that IoT is going to be very important, and here we are talking about device-to-device communication or machine-to-machine communication. Mostly we are concerned about that. It's not like that we have some active user, right? Right. So it is mostly about machine-to-machine communication. So here there's no need of orthogonality, as we have discussed in the enhanced mobile broadband or OFDM. Here there's no need of orthogonality. It should be non-orthogonal. Spectral efficiency should be high everywhere. Low complexity is important. Low PAPR is important. And we are talking about asynchronous transmission because device-to-device communication is invariably asynchronous. And we are talking about minimum out-of-band radiations. Why out-of-band radiations? Because whatever band is allotted to a given device, it should only transmit in that. Beyond that, it should not be transmitted, right? Otherwise, it will create a lot of co-channel interference, right? Additional channel interference will be created. So when we have, so many sensor networks, right? So many devices are there, right? If they start transmitting beyond their band, there will be a lot of interference, right? So that's why we are talking about out-of-band transmission. What are examples of IoT? This sensor networks are smart grid, smart cities, smart homes, intelligent transport systems, etc. These are the example of IoT, right? These are typical examples. Smart agriculture, right? For example, smart agriculture, smart transport systems, everything comes under IoT. The third category is very critical, very important, right? That is, we say the ultra reliable and low latency, right? Ultra reliable, low latency communication. And here we are talking about some millisecond latency. This latency requirement is coming here, where we are using the term ultra reliable and low latency. Reliability should be close to 100% and latency should be close to 1 millisecond, right? So there are the applications, some millisecond latency, immune to Doppler, which means that even if you are moving at very high speed, the services should not be disrupted by this high moving vehicles, right? Low complexity is everywhere. We cannot design a circuit which is very complex. Examples are tactile internet, autonomous self-driving vehicles. For example, we are talking about autonomous self-driving vehicles. Now we can say that it's basically a driverless car. So even driverless car, if it's not ultra reliable, right, and it should have a latency like a driver, right, a human a driver who is a human being, the way he thinks while driving, right? A driver takes decision in fractions of second, right? So that type of intelligence you have to give to that vehicle. right? Autonomous self-driving vehicles. So that intelligence for that it should be, so that intelligence should be latency should be very less, because it should be able to think, take the response in less than 1 millisecond latency, and it should be ultra reliable. Otherwise, it would create a lot of chaos. There are a lot of accidents, right? So now you can imagine that. Similarly, remote surgery, right? Now you can imagine that these are the type of requirements of wireless networks. It requires very low latency and ultra reliability, right? Now, now comes that how we are moving from 4G. Right now we are in the 4G era. Now we are moving to 5G, right? So how we can move that, right? So this is all about just initially I have discussed that to achieve 5G we are approaching 5G with two approach. One is the evolution path, evolving the existing network, evolving the LTE advanced network, and other is basically new technologies, new radio access technologies, right? So 5G new radio, NR, that is also told. So evolution of LTE advanced, that is 4G technology, 4G advanced technology, will continue beyond in a backward compatible manner, with the goal of improving system performance in the bands of below 6 gigahertz. So what we are aiming is that when we improve this, improvise this 4G technology, so the services which will be available will be around 5G, right? Sorry, which will be around 6 gigahertz, below 6 gigahertz, FR1, right? This is the first type of 5G services you will get, that is around 6 gigahertz. That's why we are talking about 6 Wi-Fi, right? Wi-Fi services in the 6 gigahertz range, right? Similarly, so what we expect from this? So it is also expected that at least a part of 5G requirements can be met by the continued evolution of LTE advance. So whatever LTE advancement we are doing, a part of 5G requirement, particularly this IoT services, right? Smart grid, smart grid, intelligent transport systems, and enhanced mobile broadband. These two services you can partially you can meet by using this evolution path, right, from 4G advanced to 5G. But coming to this ultra reliable low latency communication, right, there you may require a different path. So the second track is commonly known as a new RAT, a new radio, right, NR track in 3GPP, which is not limited by backward compatibility requirements. So this new technology will not be compatible, may not be compatible with 4G and 5G, as 4G and below 6 GHz 5G, but they can integrate breakthrough technologies or revolutionary technologies to achieve the best possible performance. So here we are not restricting the wireless networks to, to be backward compatible to 4G and so. So let us talk about new technology, disruptive technologies, right? And that will meet all the requirements of 5G, whatever requirements we have discussed. This is how we are talking about 5G new radio, right? So ITU, like 3GPP is a standardizing body, similarly ITU-R, right? ITU, International Telecommunication Union, Arms Radio, has finalized work on the vision for 5G systems, right? And what is the vision for 5G wireless networks? The vision is that, which includes support for explosive growth of data traffic. So 5G is meant to support explosive growth of data traffic, because data traffic is increasing exponentially. Support for massive number of machine type communication. So machine type communication was not very dominant in 4G, right? So what we are talking about in 5G, that support for massive numbers of machine type communication devices, and support for mission critical and ultra reliable and low latency communication. So mission critical and ultra reliable and low latency communications, that is the vision for 5G. This is why we are developing 5G wireless networks, right? It will support explosive growth of data traffic. It will support massive number of machine type communication devices, and it will support mission critical and ultra reliable and low latency communications, right? And rest of the services available with 4G, right? 4G and 4G advanced. But these are the services which are not possible with 4G. They are in the vision of 5G. And part of this will be met by evolving 4G around 6 gigahertz bandwidth, and part of this will be met by 5G new radio. So 4G LTE advanced networks are mostly deployed in legacy cellular bands from 6 MHz to 3.5 MHz. So this is what we are talking about LTE advanced. But when we talk about evolving this LTE advanced to 6G, we are talking about frequency range of around 6 GHz, right? Now, what are the key technologies? So we are at slide number 23. What are the key technologies, right? Which will make 4G to 5G, where 4G will evolve, 4G will advance to 5G, right? So just have a look on this slide, right? Where we are talking about software-defined networking, where we're talking about full dimensional MIMO, right? I don't know how many of you are familiar with full dimensional MIMO, right? So when you talk about software-defined networking, right, you can easily see that why we need software-defined networking, because it utilizes the resources efficiently using software-defined networking to serve a large number of devices. Because in 5G we have large number of devices, and number of devices which is increasing is exponential. Every 10 days, every 1 month, number of devices increasing, number of devices being connected is multiplying, right? It is exponential. So one way is that to support so many active users and the number of active users, you augment the hardware. You increase the hardware to support, so increase the number of antennas, increase the number of processing units and everything you do, and so that you can support more number of users. And other is that why we cannot have this software functionality. Networks should be software defined, so that if you have to scale the network, you have to add more number of devices on day-to-day basis, or month to weekly basis, or monthly basis. We should be able to do it without changing the hardware. That's why I'm writing that utilizing the resources efficiently using the software-defined networking to serve a large number of devices. Now, another important technology which will make LTE advanced to evolution for LTE advanced to 5G is full dimensional MIMO. In 4G, what we have used one dimensional MIMO, right? But now we are using full dimensional MIMO. Utilizes a large number of antennas placed in a two-dimensional 2D antenna arrays to form narrow beams in both the horizontal and vertical direction. So full dimensional MIMO is that we have antennas in horizontal direction also, or vertical direction also. Like in 4G we have only in one direction, but in 5G we have both in horizontal and vertical direction. So what it would, the name is 2D two-dimensional antenna or full dimensional MIMO. So what it improves? It improving the system performance by realizing high order multiplexing, multi-user multiplexes, so you can have more number of devices that can be added to the system, right? And second is that significantly improve beamforming and spatial user multiplexing capability. So beamforming means what? You will be able to serve more number of users. And second is that the data rate what you are supporting is going to increase, because the data rate is also increasing, right? In 4G we have 100 Mbps, and 5G we are talking about 1 gigabits per second. To get this higher data rate, we need multiple transmit antenna both in the horizontal and vertical plane. Then only we'll meet this high data rate requirement. And at the same time, you have to address more number of users. We have to provide services to more number of users. That is also meant by full dimensional MIMO. So these two technologies are very critical for the development of 5G. Around 6 gigahertz, right? 5G has two spectrum. One is around 6 gigahertz, other is beyond 24 gigahertz. Beyond 24 gigahertz, we are talking about 5G new radio. But around 6 gigahertz, we are talking about evolving the 4G to 5G, right? The evolved network, evolved 5G network. Now, another important technology which is very important for LTE, right, is NOMA, non-orthogonal multiple access. I hope some of you are familiar with that. So this NOMA, why this NOMA is important? Because NOMA increases capacity by multiplexing users to same resources at the transmitter and separating them with such interface as the receiver. Now, what will happen? I can just tell you. NOMA is basically used for machine-to-machine communications. So, number of devices which is being added is very too much, right? And if you stick to this orthogonal multiple access like OFDM or orthogonal CDMA or TDMA, you are always limited. You cannot support more users than the orthogonal dimension. But our users are increasing. So what we can do, we can multiplex user to, that's why I'm writing the writing multiplexing users to same resources. Multiplexing users to same resources at the transmitter. So whatever resources you have, let them multiplex on the same resource. There will be a lot of interference. So when you multiplex the users in time and frequency, right, there will be a lot of. But how we maintain this user separability in power domain? That's why I say that we'll transmit the users at different power, but they can be transmitted over all the time over all the frequency. Again, I will repeat. In NOMA, we are transmitting users at different power levels over the same frequency and over the same time. So there will be interference because they are overlapping now, and those interference will be removed by using a very advanced receiver that is called successive interference cancellation receiver at the receiver, right? This is the concept of NOMA, and with NOMA you can add, you can easily increase the number of users. At the same time, we are talking about green communication. What green communication? Low power consumption and less carbon footprint to the nature. This is very critical because a lot of issues will come, climate changes and all, right? So millions of devices are being added, a lot of traffic over air. So this will increase a lot of carbon footprint, right? And that is not good for our environment. So we have to, that's why this green communication had gained a lot of momentum, right? We are doing a lot of technologies which will make our low power consumption as well as the low carbon footprint. At the same time, we are talking about carrier aggregation enhancement because we have more number of users, more traffic. So we are going to add more licensed. Like in the beginning, I have told you we have a licensed spectrum. Some services uses licensed spectrum, some services use unlicensed spectrum. But in 5G, we are aggregating both a licensed and unlicensed. They will complement each other. They will complement each other. We are maximizing both, right? Then only you can add so many users. And we are talking about machine type communication. So a lot of machine type communication, and at the same time, whenever there are a lot of traffic over air, a lot of devices, there will be a possible security threat, right? So security aspect of wireless networks are getting a lot of importance nowadays. Cyber attack. We've just seen that that in one of the countries, it was their smart grid, power grid, transmission grid was hacked, and the whole country was blackout, right? Recently it happened, right? And so these things will be there. So we have to be very careful about this wireless security in 5G. Now let's move to this new RAT, new radio access technology, right? So this is all about what this. Now I have discussed the evolution of 4G to 5G. Evolution, no revolution. Now I talk about revolution. The radio access technology, new RAT, the new RAT 5G system. So this should meet all 5G requirements. So this, whatever we have discussed from 4G to 5G, we are moving. It is not meeting all the requirements of 5G, right? It may require meet some of the requirements of enhanced mobile broadband services. It may meet requirements of massive IoT devices, but it may not meet the requirements of ultra level low latency or enhanced mobile broadband services when number of users are more, right? Because number of users that is every 5 times the data traffic is increasing 10 times. For every 5 years, the data traffic is 10 times, right? So you can imagine that. So to get these requirements of 5G of getting a data rate of 10 gigabits per second, or to not be very over optimistic to get a data rate of more than 1 gigabits per second, right? Adding the data traffic 10,000 more times the data traffic than 4G, we need something new, devolution technology. So that's why I'm writing should meet all 5G requirements as it would eventually need to replace the previous generation systems in the future. In future, all the generations will be replaced by this 5G new radio. Now you can understand the vision of 5G new radio. It will eventually need to replace all the previous generation systems in the future, right? The new RAD track is also expected to have a scalable design that can seamlessly support both an above and below 6 GHz. because we know that 5G services are there in around 6 gigahertz band also. That is being evolved technology from 4G to 5G. And now when we are talking about new radio, we are talking about frequency band of more than 24 megahertz. Sorry, 24 gigahertz. This would have expected to have a scalable design. It should be a scalable design that can seamlessly support both above and below 6 gigahertz. And finally, new waveforms are required. Sorry, new waveforms, new and multiple access radio technologies, efficient design for massive MIMO or millimeter wave. These are the requirements for 5G new radio, right? So we'll move more specifically. If you are moving to slide number 28, here you can just have a look at that. Here we are talking about key enabling technologies for new radio. Improve waveforms. Waveforms we'll discuss later on. Massive MIMO. Now you can just see that we have not something full dimensional MIMO. It is massive MIMO, where we have more than 256 antennas, transmitter antennas, right? So it is in horizontal, vertical, and space, all 3 dimensions. 3D MIMO. Others say there's 3D MIMO. It's not 2D MIMO. Only on the horizontal, vertical directions. Horizontal, vertical, and space, right? Millimeter wave. Just have a look on this frequency spectrum, right? So something around 6 gigahertz, we have 4G and all, and part of 5G. And one thing is beyond 24 gigahertz, where we are talking about millimeter wave, large millimeter wave bandwidth opportunity. Beyond 24 gigahertz, we can go up to 100 gigahertz, right? Here, new radio, 5G new radio will evolve. Sorry, revolve, right? Revolutionary technology. So new 5G radio will be developed beyond 24 megahertz, right? In addition to that, when we are talking about very high 5G new radio transmitting at massive MIMO using this millimeter wave, so we are talking about HETnets, heterogeneous networks and small cells. So services will not be limited to macro cells; it will be on the small cells. Network will be heterogeneous in nature. Device-to-device communications become very critical, and then cloud RAN. This radio access network on cloud. We are not talking about anything with the fixed hardware, right? Everything will be in cloud. So if you want BTA services, let's go on the cloud, right? Open RAN, right? So everything is on the cloud. Radio access network is on the cloud. So just slide number 29. Just we talking about millimeter wave, little more detail. So why millimeter wave? So higher frequency antennas elements are smaller. You must be aware that one advantage is that that if you're going for a very high frequency, your antenna and elements will be very small, right? Because it is inversely proportional to wavelength. Huge amount of spectrum level in millimeter wave, improve performance in dense crowd. That is the goal of 5G. Strong candidate for higher peak link data rates because you have huge spectrum. So you can have a data rate of 10 gigabits per second or more. But there are challenges. Multiple antenna arrays are required for spherical coverage because whenever you're moving to high frequency band, the beamwidth will be narrow, right? So to have a spherical coverage so that the transmission is received by in all the directions, you need multiple antenna arrays, right? And that's why massive MIMO is going to help. Then IC and system design becomes increasingly complex because right now we are talking about IC design around 6 gigahertz, right? But now suddenly we are talking about IC design beyond 24 gigahertz. So everything will change, right? What the IC you design at 6 gigahertz, below 6 gigahertz will not be valid. The circuit model, the frequency response, the transient response, everything will change drastically and significantly at 24 gigahertz and beyond, right? So IC and system design becomes increasingly complex, and discovery and tracking of mobile devices become very challenging because the at higher frequency the range of transmission is very limited, right? It is something around typically around 100 meters, right? So discovery and tracking of devices become very difficult if you are going for millimeter wave. So few slides on massive MIMO. So when you talk about massive MIMO, just now I am just showing you this one. So you have antennas in all the dimensions. So multiple antennas, a transmitter receiver provides multiple single paths. So what is happening? See, in simple term, multiple transmitter receiver, multiple signal path, right? Multiple signal path, and hence better performance in terms of data rate. So multiple signal pathways, you can transmit a very higher data rate, and link reliability because there are multiple paths. So even some paths are defade, other paths will be in good conditions. All the paths cannot be bad. So you are transmitting signals on multiple paths. So some paths may be bad, some paths may be good, and that will help you recover your data, transmitted data. So this is important. If you have multiple transmit antenna, your link reliability will increase, right? If you have multiple transmit antenna, your data rate will increase, right? Reduce transmit power because you have multiple antennas, and fast fading prevented power efficiency is better. How it is achieved? So now we are talking about different types of gain. If you're talking massive MIMO, we are talking about different types of gain. I hope you are familiar with the spatial multiplexing gain, then spatial diversity gain, then array gain, and multi-use diversity. Everything will come into picture in in a very significant way when you talk about massive MIMO. That is spatial multiplexing, spatial diversity, array gain, and multi-user diversity. Right, but so in summary, why massive MIMO is important for 5G new radio? They are capable to improve the radiated energy efficiency by 100 times, and at the same time increasing the overall capacity by 10 times. So radiated energy efficiency, because you are transmitting in a very narrow beam, side lobes are very less, so radiation energy efficiency will increase by 100 times, and the overall capacity will increase by 10 times, and that is what we want in 5G. Massive MIMO systems can be put together with the help of low power and low costly components, because we are the length of this antenna will be less, right? And so it will be less costly. Massive MIMO makes the multiple access layer very simple. So when you have this, everything is done at the physical layer, MAC layer will become very simple. Massive MIMO increases the strength equally against unintended man-made interference and internet jamming. And the interesting part is that security aspect I'm talking about. You talk about security aspect from the intended jammer or interference man-made noise. If you are massive MIMO, because you have multiple paths, it's very difficult to disrupt the communication in all the paths, right? Because you are transmitting in all the direction, right? So that's why they increase the strength equally against the man-made interference and intended jammers. And best part is that massive MIMO, right? Massive MIMO and millimeter wave, they are complementing each other. That's why I'm writing why massive MIMO at millimeter wave frequencies. That is 5G new radio, because massive MIMO resolves millimeter wave issue, right? So we have seen the large available bandwidth available millimeter wave. We are seeing a lot of bandwidth available, but what is the problem with the very high frequency? If you're transmitting a very high frequency, there will be high path loss due to antenna aperture size and atmospheric absorption. If you are transmitting very high frequency, there will be absorption by rain droplets. There will be scintillating effects. So if you can see here, frequency in gigahertz, because of the lambda will be very small. It becomes comparable to the wavelet size. There is droplet size, right? So particles in the environment, they become at the length of that, and this particles and droplets in the environment, they are of the same length. So you will have multiple effect due to H2O, that is water droplets, O2. So this there will be a lot of attenuation. What do you say that path loss? This attenuation will be lot due to atmospheric absorption. Your signal strength will be deteriorated, attenuated. So now what will happen if you use a massive MIMO at millimeter wave? So this path loss can be mitigated by using high gain directional antennas in massive MIMO. So because massive MIMO, you can have directional antennas, right? You can steer your beam, right? It have very high gain. Just now I am showing you that main lobe. You see that back lobe, their side lobes and back lobe are very less. You have clean, highly efficient, the radiation efficiency is quite high, and you can have a beam, main lobe beam, that will take care of your high gain, high loss wireless environment, right? That's why I'm writing path loss can be mitigated by using high gain directional antennas. So that's why millimeter wave, massive MIMO complements millimeter wave transmitter. So these two technologies, that is millimeter wave complemented with massive MIMO, these two technologies are going to be the integral part of 5G new radio. let's have now coming to some of the other important challenges issues in 5G. We'll discuss now briefly about HETNets, heterogeneous networks, because when we are moving to 4G to 5G, right? So we have multiple type of networks, right? And we'll see that when we talk about device-to-device communication now, we will give more emphasis on HETNets and device-to-device communication. So what is HETNet? Consists of a mix of high power macro cell. So bigger one is macro cell. You can just see that. So heterogeneous network deployment using different low power nodes. So you have a macro cell, bigger antenna is macro cell, right? So consists of a mix of high power macro cells and low power nodes, pico, femto, micro. So what you just see closely here, we have a big cell, that is your macro cell. Then we have pico. So you have pico cell, small base station antenna. It is serving some users here. Then we have femtocell inside the building. We have femtocell, right? Then we have relay communication also is there. This, we have mobile goes there, and we have relay RF backhaul. So backhaul is on the RF, but this is communicated through this relay, right? Then we have this radio resource unit, RRH, right? It is again being connected. It is not relay, but it is being connected to this main BTS tower by this by this optical fiber, right? We have optical fiber from RRHs to base station. Similarly, here also we have optical fiber, right, from Pico to base station, and the mobile user is being served by a RRH, radio resource hub, right? So this is how we see. There are four things. One is the macro cell, bigger one, right? Core network. Then we have pico cell, where we have smaller, BTS, right? Base station transmit receive, but smaller one, small height, and that is serving. Then we come to this femto cell. Inside a building, we have this femto cell. Then we come to relay, where this mobile is not directly communicating with BTS. They are communicating with relay, and relay is being connected to the BTS using this RF backhaul. Then we are using RRH, right? Because this RRH is being connected to this macro cell by optical fiber. So we are not on a relay RF backhaul, but this RRH is serving the mobile user, right? So heterogeneous requirement, because number of devices are being added so much that a bigger macro cell serving all the users is now a remote possibility. It cannot serve all the users. The signal strength will be so poor that, that is the case right now. We are facing a lot of, services by Airtel or BSNL. They are being, very poor nowadays. The reason is that number of devices being added so much, and we have just a macro cell. We have big BTS tower, and they are serving all the users, right? Signal strength is removing. So to address this, we should go for this pico cell, femto cell, relay-based network, RRH network, right? So what happens if you're talking about this type of services? Bring service base station. This is base station closer to user, efficiently supporting high traffic rate and quality of service. If you are this with this pico cell, we have this base station very closer to the user, so it can support high traffic and quality of service is quite good. Improves indoor and cell edge coverage. Very important is that. And cell edge, what you will do at the edge of the cell or indoor, there will always issue. You always face that. So if you have this type of femto networks or relay networks, in that case, it improves indoor and cell edge coverage and offers opportunity to lower transmission power, saving energy to base station, right? Because now you are confined to very low, small area, so transmitted power will be less. So offers opportunity to lower transmission power, so saving energy at BS. So this macro BS, you are going to save the energy, because you need not to transmit from this macro BS to these users. There will be, these users will be served by this small BTS or RRH or relay, or inside the building we have this wireless LAN, right? So this is the advantage of your HetNets, but it has a challenge. It has a challenge. It's not, nothing comes free, right? So just see a homogeneous network where we have simply one macro cell based system, and it is serving all the users. See, very clean, right? In 2G and 3G, we did the same thing, right? Macro based system and users mobile. This is the homogeneous network. What the advantage of key features of homogeneous network? Large cell size, hexagonal coverage, poor quality of service at cell edge and indoor environment. The problem with this macro or homogeneous network is that you will have poor service, quality service at cell edge, at the edge of the cells, and in indoor environment. To overcome this, we are talking about heterogeneous network, where we have, you just see that we have macro base station. In addition to that, we have small cell base station, the small base station at the edge, right? And then, you know, so what is happening that you are serving this users at the edge, cell edge. These users are being served by this small base station. What are the heterogeneous key features? A smaller cell size. A small cell include micro, pico, femto. That just now I have discussed. Increased capacity, so number of users can be added more. Traffic will be more, and consistent quality of experience everywhere. So everywhere one is happy because they are being served quite good. Even edge, cell edge or indoor users. Strict interference management schemes required. But the problem is that there will be a lot of interference, right? Because there are a lot of users, they are confined to, there will intra-cluster interference. So pico cell will interfere with the micro cell, something like that. A lot of interference will be there, and you have to manage this interference, right? So these are the challenges. So HetNet requires the changes in the following important aspects: network topology, cell association, the backhaul deployment, interference management. So mobility and interference management are the most challenging issues in HetNets, because mobiles are moving. In that case, how will mobile from PicoNet it will go to the femto. From femto it will go to the macro. How to do this handover between different small cells? So handover between the small cells is very important if there is a mobility issues there, right? Now, so this slide number 46, where we are talking about device-to-device communication. Just see here, just now we have discussed about HetNet, right? D2D communication, HetNets and its applications. Just see that this green one, it is a traditional user equipment based SSL link. This is for traditional one. And this yellow one, pink one is device-to-device link. So this, you have macro base station, and we have big tower here. So it is serving so many mobile users, right? But there are between mobile to mobile. So public safety services, content serially, local multicasting. There are devices we are communicating with each other without involving the macro base station. Local advertisement, right? Inside a Pico base station, some devices will be served by this Pico base station, but others can communicate with each other. Similarly, device-to-device based vehicle communication, the vehicle to vehicle, they are communicating with each other, vehicle to vehicle. So these all are without including the micro base station. Their devices are communicating. So device-to-device communications enable two proximity users to transmit signal directly without going through the base station. We are not involving base station, but we are able to communicate to each other. It can increase network spectral efficiency. So number of users that is being added in the network is increasing. So network spectral efficiency and energy efficiency, because now we have transmitted to a nearby device only. Reduce transmission delay, because nearby devices are communicating, transmission delay will be less, and that is the requirement of 5G also. Delay should be in terms of 1 millisecond. Offload traffic for the base station. So traffic from the micro base station is offloaded to this, and elevate congestion in the cellular core network. So congestion will be removed, right? So device-to-device communication has advantage. So it can increase network spectral efficiency and energy efficiency, reduce transmission delay, offload traffic for the base station, and elevate congestion in the cellular core network. Congestion will be less. However, many technical challenges need to be addressed for device-to-device communication to harvest the potential benefits. There are a lot of challenges. Just now we are discussing challenges head nets. Now we are talking about challenges in the device-to-device communication, which includes device discovery and device session setup. Second challenge, device-to-device resource allocation to guarantee quality of service. Third challenge, device-to-device memo transmission, as well as device-to-device aided base station deployment in heterogeneous networks. Right? These are the challenges which will be there with the device-to-device communication. Right? Due to the physical proximity and the potential reuse gain and hop gain, device-to-device communication can significantly increase network spectral efficiency and energy efficiencies, which are very important for 5G. Why I'm talking about what is happening there due to physical proximity, because device-to-device communication is between the just see here, these two vehicles are communicating. For local advertisement, this local advertisement company is communicating with these devices. Content sharing between among devices, public safety devices, services, everywhere, they are very close to each other. So due to physical proximity and the potential reuse gain and hop gain, device-to-device communication can significantly increase network spectral efficiency and energy efficiency. That's why device-to-device communication 5G is very critical. Right? Now, D2D communication invariably is LTE technology, right? It is basically D2D is an LTE technology, that is 4G technology. Now it is being, upgraded for 5G new radio or 5G 6 GHz band. So D2D communication is a peer-to-peer link which does not use the cellular network infrastructure, but enables LTE-based services devices to communicate directly with one another. So LTE-based network devices are communicating directly with each other. Just another way to look at the device-to-device communication. That this is your base station. They are communicating. This red color one is for from base station to user equipment, right? But these user equipment 1, 2, 3, they are communicating with each other also. This is basically device-to-device communication, right? What are the benefits? Reliable and instant communication, power saving, use of licensed spectrum, reduce interference. But challenges, as now we have discussed, issues related to authorization and authentication may occur, right? That is also one of the challenges. Whom to authorize to communicate? Can everybody communicate to you? All the devices should communicate to each other? No. Otherwise, there are a lot of security issues. So there should be authorization and then authentication. Both is required, right? And this is the last slide. This device-to-device communication can also bring low transmission delay. Furthermore, device-to-device communication utilizes the licensed spectrum bands and thus can guarantee uniform services provision, quality services. One important point is that, as contrary to Bluetooth, it is using licensed spectrum. Moreover, device-to-device communication can offload traffic and avoid congestion in the cellular core network. D2D communication have also been considered as a cost-effective solution for public safety services in case of lack of network coverage in 3GPP advanced. So just I have compared here D2D2, Wi-Fi Direct, NFS, Zigbee, Bluetooth, UWB. And the most competing technology is Bluetooth, and generally these two are compared, device-to-device and Bluetooth. Right? D2D is 3GPP LTE technology, LTE advanced technology basically, LTE advanced. But Bluetooth is Bluetooth SIG. It has a separate standard. It uses a licensed band. Bluetooth uses an unlicensed band at 2.4 GHz. The range, maximum distance, 10 to 100 meter. Here also 10 to 100 meter. Range-wise, both are same. Maximum data rate and device-to-device 1 gigabits per second because it is using the LTE advanced. But here, Bluetooth can only support 24 megabits per second. Device discovery, here you need to take the help of base station. In device-to-device communication, base station has one role, very important role, that is device discovery. Manual pairing, this manually we do. You know that in Bluetooth we do manually. Uniformity of service provision, yes. Here you will have quality of service ensured. Uniform services is required. In Bluetooth, no. Application, public safety, content sharing, local advertisement, cellular relay. These are important case of D2D application of D2D communication. Bluetooth, object exchange, peripheral connection. We can use Bluetooth there, right? Finally, conclusion. So what we have discussed in this 1.5 hour session, while 5G will integrate the latest technology challenges to achieve the best possible performance, LTE Advanced is expected to evolve as a part of 5G technology in a backward compatible manner. So LTE Advanced will evolve to 5G in a backward compatible manner. So one part of 5G will be met by evolving the LTE Advanced. Evolution of LTE Advanced will continue in a backward compatible manner with the goal of improving system performance in the bands of below 6 GHz. So this LTE advancement to 5G will be in the band of 6 GHz only. But the second track is commonly known as the new radio, 5G new radio track in 3GPP, which is not limited by backward compatibility requirement and can integrate breakthrough technologies to achieve the best possible performance. So here we'll talk about revolutionary new technologies like millimeter wave, massive MIMO that will achieve best possible performance, and this will finally eventually will be your new radio technology in coming years. Thank you. So, ma'am, any question from anybody? Any query? Hello.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, there's a question in the chat.
Let me close now.
Audible? Pritam Kumar sir, am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, you are audible. Tell me. Ask me, sir.
Okay. Sir, I want to know that suppose if I used HeadNet, then Spectrum Manager or base stations select that which frequency allocate for a particular device.
Yes.
But if when we consider the device to device communication, then who decide that which frequency are used between two devices or more than two devices?
You see, that's why I'm telling you this device to device communication is a, they are using licensed spectrum, and that is a LTE technology, and LTE has a predefined frequency band, right? And so it can use only that predefined frequency band. And second thing is that we have to see that they are not interfering with the actual transmission. In one of the slides, I have shown you that we have transmission from the macro base station to the mobile user, and mobile users are also user equipments are also communicating with each other. So bands are selected such that they don't interfere. This is one aspect. And second aspect is that they will be using only predefined, I'm also using the word predefined LTE frequency band. So in other words, to get this D2D services, you have to subscribe. You have to pay for that. It is not a free service. Because you are using a licensed spectrum, it is not a free service. You have to subscribe that, and they will be assigning you the predefined frequency band. You can only communicate on that using that SDN network, software defined network.
And is this pay service for both devices or particular a single device?
And that's what I'm telling you. There are two modes in which D2D communication works. One is that when you have limited access, you can authorize and authenticate, right? Everybody cannot communicate to you like in Bluetooth, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
right? So if it's authorized, authenticate, then both has to pay, right? Who is communicating and who is getting the service. If it is like local, if you are transmitting a multicast transmission, advertisement and all, right? In that case, only the service provider they have to pay, right? If you're just because everybody is using that, and you are taking advantage of that because you are broadcasting the advertisement, right? Then you have to pay. Then only the broadcasting, the service provider will pay, not the users will pay.
Thank you, sir. And my sir, my another question is just a doubt actually. Suppose,
Okay.
sir, suppose you told that it's a machine type communication, that is machine to machine communication and device to device communication, two different technologies.
Mhm.
But sir, I found some research article there that is a camera, that is security camera, IoT inbuilt security camera, considered as a device to device communication, and considered as a machine to machine communication. So that purpose I want to know that that is which device considered as a device to device communication and which component considered as a machine to machine communication.
See, that's what I'm telling you. They are using these two terms interchangeably. Most of the papers, right? So generally, if
Yes.
we machine to machine communication talks, if two servers, right? We have two servers. They are communicating, right? If you are in a vehicle, from one vehicle to other vehicle, you are communicating, right? So generally, when we talk, the whole system is involved. Whole system is involved in machine to machine communication. But device to device communication be a standalone device, like sensor. If you take, right? If you take a sensor, two sensors are communicating. We have temperature sensor, we have humidity sensor. They are communicating to each other in multi-hop network. Then it is small devices which is purposely used for sensing and transmitting, right? Then generally we use that it is a device-to-device communication, right? And when from one system to other system, we are talking about like two servers to moving vehicles, right? From safety measures, from safety vehicle to the nearest user. So these types of services generally we term used as machine-to-machine communication. But there is not a very clear-cut demarcation. They are used interchangeably. So like a camera, if you talk about camera is a full system, right? It has everything. So if you ask me, it is from machine to machine communication.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank
It
you.
is very nice. It was very nice full session. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Sir, there is a question in the chat box. What are all power allocation algorithms in D2D communication?
I'm not able to hear you. Can you speak loudly, Jyotsna?
Sir, there is one question in the chat box.
Yes,
What are
yes.
all the
Tell me.
power allocation algorithms used in device-to-device communication?
See, power allocation algorithm, that is a very tricky issue in device-to-device communication, right? And generally because it is a battery-operated device, right? Devices are communicating to each other, right? So it depends upon which protocol they are following, right? So LTE Advanced is a technology where we have, because this is a licensed spectrum, right? Licensed defined technology, LTE Advanced technology. So LTE Advanced has a clear-cut, standard protocol for power allocation, right? It's not different that like in Bluetooth we don't have the such allocation. So here we are following that same standard power allocation algorithm what we are following in the typical 4G networks. It's not different from that. So any other question, madam?
Yes, sir. One
Yes.
more question is there. Is
Yes.
it
Yes.
LTEA or LTEA Pro?
So again, see, similarly the 3.5G or 3.75G, right? So LTE Pro as such, in 3GPP, we take the reference of 3GPP. So generally they talk about LTE Advanced. LTE Advanced is basically evolved to 5G, right? In sub 6 gigahertz band, right? Some some books or even some literature they talk about LTE Pro advancement to 5G, right? But you ask me, most of the researchers around the globe they have the understanding that LTE Advanced to evolve to 5G. It is not LTE Advanced Pro.
Okay.
This according.
Any questions from participants? Any more questions? Okay, sir. I think there are no more questions.
Thank you. Thank you all for this is a very important and very exhaustive topic. I try to make it as simple as possible, but definitely you may have doubt later on. So I am open to accept any doubt. You can write to me at my mail ID, that is pkumar@iitp.ac.in. So because the research committee should be always open to interact beyond the lecture hour also, you can write to me in whatever best possible manner I will be able to serve you. Right? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the great presentation. It was very enlightening, sir. Thank you for briefing us regarding these all LTE advancement, new radio concepts, and also HETNETs concepts and all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I hope participants will investigate further more and they can do research in such areas. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks.
Pleasure having you. Thank you.
Thank you, and say my thanks to Dr. Rao also. I don't know where he is, but just convey my thanks to him
Yes,
also.
sir. Sure, sir. Sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.